woke up at 3 a.m. Within my head hearing the song, I Believe I Can Fly. But the reason I woke up at 3 a.m. with that is when we were in Uganda, that was the song that JT was running around singing. And what got me is, I guess Pastor James got to know me pretty well, because when we showed up, we were met by this guy named Michael. He was our driver. And his main job was pretty much to make sure I didn't do anything stupid. So he wouldn't let us out of his sight. I'm like, I want to go shopping. No. I want to know. I'm like, really? You're no fun. And anyway, so we were met with Michael, and by Michael, and every time JT would sing, I believe I could fly. I could believe I could touch the sky. Michael would, in this crazy high-pitched voice, say, I could fly. I could fly. Just like that. And so I woke up at 3 a.m. hearing Michael's voice say, I can fly, I can fly. I was so annoyed. So I'm a bit exhausted, but that's okay. And that being said, really, I'm not sure where to start. But what I want to do is I want to start by saying thank you for allowing my family to be your representatives of the love that you have for the Lord in Uganda. It was an honor to be there. It was humbling to be there. I will tell you that it was really good, though, to be there. And I want to encourage you guys with this. I sat down with Pastor Simon. He was one of the leaders with the choir when they were stranded here. He pretty much lived in the office over there. And we were just sitting down having a conversation, and he said this to me. He said, Shawn, he goes, I now know why we got stranded in Angels Camp. I said, really? Why? He said, because God taught me how to love while I was there. And that was because of you guys. And so that's a huge compliment. And so I just wanted to share that with you from Pastor Simon. Pastor James says, thank you. He loves you. He's praying for you. Ponciano, Ponciano's Ponciano. He loves you. And he's just all over the place. And Carol and Linda and Esther and Jessica, they all send their love to you guys. And do you want to say something, Connie? Huh? Okay. So Connie's going to share something, maybe. I don't know what. I guess we'll have.
Isaac said there's a microphone.
Oh, it's hidden. So.
Hello. I told Shawn when he asked if I wanted to share, I said, well, I'll come up and say thank you. But he kind of already did that. But seriously, though, the trip wouldn't have been possible without you guys. And not just financially, but your prayers meant so much. And I mean, it really was a miracle. We were healthy the whole time. So some just really mild tummy stuff, but nothing major at all. I mean, we were all really healthy the whole time. We're still healthy today, so it's good. And I do think that was your guys' prayers that kept us that way. So keep praying that JT stays healthy, because he was in the dirt a lot. Out of all of us, yeah. So, but we had a great trip, and I just want you guys to know that you were part of it. We thought about you guys a lot, and we realized that you were praying and supporting us, and that just meant the world to us. And you guys, part of you came with us. You were in our hearts. So it just was a neat thing, and we were able to share, your love that you sent with the people that we met and the people in Uganda. So God's hand has been with the choir, the group of kids that were here, and their families. They're healthy. They're doing well. We got to see all of them. We got to see all of the adults that were here stranded in Angels Camp. They're all doing really well. And I think, again, that's God's hand being on them, and it's our prayer. It's our prayers that have gone out for them since they've been back in Uganda. So thank you guys for that. I'll be around after church and can answer questions if anybody has anything specific or anything like that. But we had a really great trip. It was actually kind of hard to leave. So the kids, Shawn and I too, but the kids, they really didn't want to come home. So that's how good our trip was.
If we were there a couple more days, we probably wouldn't be coming home.
No. So thanks, guys.
So I'm going to try to take you on the trip with us a little bit. Like Connie said, it was a great trip. I mean, some of the miracles that we saw, some of the frustrations in traveling, just so you know. There was $1,000 of COVID tests that we had to take, which we didn't think about, And what I'm wondering is why it's $750 in the U.S. for the same COVID test that costs $250 in Uganda. But anyway, it is what it is. We had all this crazy stuff, and you hear about, when you get to Uganda, it's gonna take you. They literally thought it was gonna take us 2.5 hours to get through the customs and everything in Uganda. Well, it took us 20 minutes, I think, from the time our plane landed till we were loading our van in the parking lot. It took us longer in the U.S. through the customs, but just things like that. We saw miracle after miracle of just little things of God smiling on us. And just to kind of recap a few things, we get there, we were exhausted. We got there early, so Pastor James took us out to a restaurant for breakfast. We had breakfast, had a good cup of coffee. We were delirious, all the things that are associated with that. Went back to the house, kind of unwound a little bit. And then the next day we woke up and we went out Boda shopping. So Ponciano and Simon want to thank you guys for the Bodas. We were able to get 2 brand new Bodas for them. And you'll see pictures of them. Yeah, that's something to be thankful for. It was interesting. One of the things that we found is that you would come up with one solution, but with that solution came 4 or 5 problems that you had to fix. So like when we would send money to buy food, they then had the problem, how are they going to get the food to the people? And we now understand because we went to all the choir's house, all the kids in the choir's homes, and it literally took us 3 or 4 days to travel the distance where all these kids were because COVID. The kids aren't in the boarding school that they would normally be in. The families that lived in town moved outside of town so that they can be in the village and grow their food and whatnot. And it was just kind of crazy. So like I said, you come up with one solution, but now how are you going to get the food to them? They can't come here. Then these people didn't have a way to get it to them because they didn't have the transportation. So the Bodas were well used and well loved by the time we got them. They were supposed to, after X amount of miles or kilometers on it, they had to take it back for service. So they were getting them serviced before we left because they put that much wear on them because they're just driving them around. And I'll tell you, Boda drivers are interesting. We saw some crazy things with Boda drivers. They'll carry anything on it. We saw one Boda had like 5 tires on it that they're holding on to. I got a picture of a lady on the back, a kid smashed between the lady and the driver. Like you look at it, you're like, wait a minute, I think that's a child. And yeah, it was a child. But I think the craziest one, it's either the refrigerator on the side on the Boda or the Boda driver carrying a Boda sideways and another guy holding onto the Boda driver so the Boda wouldn't fall off that they were carrying on the Boda. That one may take the icing on the cake. I'm not sure. It's amazing. But we really learned why they need them because the roads were horrible. Like when we were flying back, we didn't sleep much the first trip because of the Ugandan soccer team or whatever it was that was so excited to be on a plane was yowling. So our first 5-hour trip from Entebbe to Qatar on the way home, we didn't sleep. But when I fell asleep from Doha towards San Francisco, I was woken up by some turbulence. And I'm thinking, man, what's up with these Ugandan roads? Because that's how it was. It was just, it's crazy. We got pictures for that. But anyway, so day one, we bought the Bodas. They were totally blessed. They were excited. They smiled. I'm sure you guys got the thank you video. They were really grateful for that. So that was Thursday, I think it was. Friday, we were told, you got to be up at 5 a.m. I was like, 5 a.m.? Are you kidding me? And we're going for our safari. So the other thing we were supposed to do was take Pastor James and his family out on a safari to give them a break. It's been 2 years of chaos for them. And I'll tell you this, when you get there, you understand why he needs a break. I couldn't imagine, just being a pastor in America is tough when you just deal with just everyday life's problems. Magnify it with a problem everywhere you turn, right? And we're not talking just, we're not talking insignificant, like my boyfriend just broke up with me problems, like, okay, deal with it. We're talking life or death problems, like I don't have any food, like, and everywhere you turn, there's just stuff. And I asked, just in a conversation with Pastor James, I'm like, how do you do it? How do you know who do you meet their need and who don't you? And then because the need is so great, and I'll address that a little bit later, but it was crazy. So we took them on a safari because that's what you guys told me to do, get them away, give them a break. He told me that was the first time that his family has ever been on a safari, that no group has ever invited them to join him. And so you'll see some pictures of him, they really enjoyed it. They smiled. I think for the first time I got to see him relax a little bit. It was perfect timing because when we got there, the church that was on lockdown for 2 years was now told they could have church. And so everybody on his staff wanted to do church that Sunday, but they just weren't ready for it that Sunday. There was no way. So he had an excuse not to do it, which was nice. So we got to take them on safari. They had a great time. They were totally refreshed and blessed. Pastor James wants to say thank you for sending him on a safari and his family. They tried to kill me on the safari. The last stop for lunch, now you got to understand, I'm terrified of heights. And so we climbed up these stairs, and here's this restaurant that had this overhang, and then underneath the overhang was where they would sell things. They took us on the overhang. Now, the construction there is not like the construction here. So I'm walking, and it's moving, and I'm freaking out. They're like, here, eat. I'm like, you don't understand. And then it's plastic chairs. You know what the biggest threat to a large individual is? Plastic chairs. That's public humiliation waiting to happen, right? Because those things break. And so here we are on this. I'm freaked out. Finally, I've got to get down. And I just ate real quick, and I went back down. And they're like, where's he going? I'm like, I'm not going to die. Anyway, so we had a good time. That was on the equator. We saw some cool things there. We straddled the equator. They did an experiment there. Saw a bunch of animals. And then they took us to where we were staying. And I think they were just trying to kill me again. Because we were on the hillside overlooking the Rift Valley. Beautiful. Just beautiful. You could just see for miles. And then they told us, they said, well, if you hear some gunshots, don't worry about it. What? It's when the elephants come into the community garden down there, they shoot the guns to scare the elephants out of the community garden. Could you imagine waking up and an elephant being in your garden? It's kind of crazy. But anyway, it was 174 steps down to the room we were staying on. I swear it was 2,999 steps on the way back up. It was just crazy. By the time we got back, we're like, because the steps aren't uniform, right? It was nuts. But it was a great time. They were totally blessed. So that gets us to getting back to the church on Sunday. They had 3 days of prayer and fasting, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So we went to, we went to home visits throughout the week. We went to the kids' homes. It was real humbling to go up to these kids' homes. Some of them were nicer than others. Some of them had dirt floors. Some of them had concrete floors. I'll tell you this, one of the things that I really appreciate that Pastor James had done is every kid that's in the school and is sponsored in the choir, he makes sure that they have a mattress to sleep on because it's important to get a good night's rest to get an education. Now, it may be on the floor, but they have a mattress at least to sleep on. Some people just sleep on the ground. And I remember going to one house, I think it was Arnold's house, and we had to hike up this mountain. And we're there, and they bring us in, and we're sitting down, and they're just so grateful for what we did, for their kids, that as we're leaving, the mom hands us this bushel of bananas. And I'm thinking, I can't take that, right? But she was so grateful for how you guys loved her children that they gave us what they could. And it was just humbling. we went to another house that it was Atchpee's house, and they moved out of town during the lockdown because they have a soap making business where they make soap and from coconut oil. And it's interesting because we walked down. First, we had to find their house, and then and Papa Atchpee was just stoked. I mean, he texted me this morning with a message for you guys on WhatsApp. He said, "Happy Sunday to the family. God is number one." And so that's what he's saying to you guys today. And but anyway, it's weird because these coconuts are like this big, and they put them in this thing, and they get the coconut oil, and then they make soap. And so here's the soap right here. And this soap comes in a package with 24 of these bars of soap. And so we're like, hey, let's buy some soap, So we bought a thing of soap. 24 bars of soap was about 8,000 shillings. If you do the math, divide 8,000 by 3,500, that's a little over $2 for 24 things of soap. I was told, sells between 1 or 2 of those a week. So we bought a thing of soap, and he gave us one. And I'm like, what? Why? Like, I wanted to bless you, but he said, no, thank you for taking care of my kids. So we got him back, and we bought a bunch more. And I was hoping to have a little thing. We'll have it next week. I'll just be honest. I was dead tired yesterday. It just didn't happen. But I got a picture. I'm going to put the information of the Atchpee's family, and you can pick it up next week. But we have a bar of soap for every one of you guys to take home, just to say thank you for being part of our trip with us. Plus, we wanted to support their family. And so each bar of soap cost about 10 cents there. This same bar of soap here, a handmade coconut oil bar of soap, you do the math, right? So what we spent $2.50 for would have been about $120 back here. So, but be praying for the Atchpee's family. We'll have a thing for you there. They were just so, and they're so grateful for how we took care of their kids. So that's in the back. Take one when you go with you. Then we get to the prayer and fasting meetings, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And if you've never been to a black church, you would be a little culture shocked. John, at the end of a worship set, if John was in Uganda, he would be sweating profusely. I mean, not just because it's hot, but because they get with it. And it's loud, and they're animated. And Aldana would have been right at home. And that's all I was thinking. It was like, Aldana would love to be here. And but, I mean, it is hot and humid and everything. But we walk, so it went from 4 to 6, because at 6 they have to be able to send everybody home because the lockdown's at 7. They have a curfew at 7, so they need people to be able to get home. And so from 4 to 5, they have a pastor that just prays for an hour. And let me tell you, he prays. Like, he is getting with it. Like, you're like, you don't know what he's saying, but he's praying, and he's sweating, and he's excited, and you're scared, and you're not sure what's happening, and you're like, and it's crazy because they trick you. Like, they'll speak their Ugandan language, and then they throw English in there, and then go back Ugandan, and all this, you're sitting there, and you're like, yeah, I'm getting. No, he just spoke English. Just when you think you're getting it, he pulls the rug out from underneath you. But a lot of prayer and fasting went into that first service. They just wanted to make sure it was bathed. And Saturday we had our first of 4 services, which they had me share at. The 2 weeks we were there, I got an opportunity to preach 8 times to their church, not to mention the leadership training that we did. We just had just a great time. And I'll tell you what, the songs that we sing, like Waymaker, it really sounds, and this is not a knock on anybody, but it really sounds a lot different when somebody needs that to be a reality. When you're talking, really, do they have food or do they not? Is God really going to provide for them, or is he not? And that's the thing. I think Connie and I have multiple times, we just would sit in our bed and lay there. We go to 8 o'clock, 8:30 after JT went down, we just lay in the bed and we're just like trying to process everything. And it was like we kind of locked ourselves in there because we were just afraid to ask the question because we didn't know we could handle what the answer might be. And I mean, there's several times I asked one kid, I said, well, where's your dad? Well, he abandoned us, and mom with 4 kids just up and left because he was a Muslim and they became Christian, so he left them. And that was one of the moms that lives out in the front, and just a sweet family, and he wants to be a doctor because he wants to take care of his mom. And you just hear these stories. We heard one guy tell us, it was our safari driver. Or was it? No, it wasn't. One of our drivers. He said that his dad, when he became a Christian, his dad tried to murder him 3 times because he was Muslim. And it's like, wow, but. It's just different. And so some of the things that you saw that were just difficult and hard, and just the gamut of emotions trying to sort through it. And it was, I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't easy. It was tough at times, but it was totally worth it. And just to be able to be a listening ear. But then we went to the kids' homes. Connie celebrated her birthday there. So she doesn't look any older, does she? She's just beautiful as ever. And that morning, we took her to breakfast. Pastor James and Lillian and I, we all went to breakfast while they went and picked up all the kids for a surprise birthday party. So we were able to have a surprise birthday party for Connie. She had no clue. All the choir kids were there, every one of them, which was huge because, I mean, it took us 4 days to visit them all, but they went and gathered them all, brought them to the compound, sang happy birthday. We had lunch together. It was just an amazing time to have. You'll see a picture of all the kids together there. And I'm sure it'll be a birthday that Connie never forgets. So we were able to celebrate that. That's when we gave out some of the food that you guys purchased. We bought some food to pass out to the people. The underwear and socks that you gave, that's when we gave those out too. It's interesting because they like everything so regiment there, right? And so they put all these chairs out when they put the food on it that they were going to take home to their families. And then they gave them their socks and their underwear. And so in the picture, I said to everybody, I'm like, okay, everybody, show us your underwear. And so they're kind of laughing, and it was kind of uncomfortable because here they are they're standing behind a chair with food and their underwear. And they're like, this is kind of awkward. And we're all laughing, they're laughing, and it was just kind of funny. But it was a great time. They were really blessed to have that. And then we were able to give food to some of the teachers that haven't been able to work. I think we got food for 70 teachers to give out. We went out to, one of the things that Pastor James did with the money they raised from their trip was bought some plots of land out a couple hours away, right on the Nile, where they are now growing their own food. They're growing corn and everything. But like I said, they got these plots of land and they're growing corn, but now what are they going to do with it? Now they got to process it, because with the corn, what they make is this stuff called maize, which they make what they call posha, which is the most disgusting stuff in the world, because there's no flavor to it. It's just cornmeal that is ground up corn that it puffs up, and the reason they like it so much is when you eat it, it swells in your stomach and it makes you satisfied. And then they'll put whatever greens with that. And in Kenya, it's called ugali, and there's a reason it's called ugali, because it tastes just like it sounds, ugali. And so that we were able to, on that trip, bring on the top of our van when we almost died. Not really. It was the equivalent of, I want to say 800 or 750 pounds of cornmeal on the top of our van. And so we're coming back with all this cornmeal on the top of their van. And I told our driver, whose main job was to keep me safe, or really to keep me from doing anything stupid. said, Michael, I think it's going to rain. We probably should get a tarp. So we tried to find a tarp, and it took us a while. Finally, we found a tarp. So he gets out of the car and leaves. Now, you can't see inside this van. The windows are tinted. And I'm sitting there, and I got my window down, and this guy comes walking up, and he's looking at us thinking, hey, this guy left, and there's just a Mzungu in the car. And he's looking at the stuff. And apparently, I didn't see this, but apparently he tried to climb up on the back to take one of those big things. At that moment, Pastor James throws open the door and jumps out and chases this guy away. I was like, it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. Lily and his wife is cracking up because this guy had no idea there was any, Ugandans in there. It was great. Anyway, we got it tarped, went back, and so then we had our first church service. We did, like I said, we did a bunch of leadership training, gave out food. We celebrated a couple of the kids' birthdays. Hamza, he was one of the choir members, not from our trip, but his sister was with us. He was a couple years prior to that. And, all he kept saying was, how come we didn't come to Angels Camp when I was in the choir? I wish I would have. How come I'm like, hey, I don't know, buddy. It's not my fault. But we were able to celebrate his birthday, give him a cake. That was his second birthday cake, and he was turned 20. There was another gal who lived in, so when you got to our compound, you had to go through one gate, and to the right, there was I guess you'll call it like an apartment complex. It was just like kind of a rectangular building. I think it had 3 or 4, girls, did it have 3 or 4 rooms? 4 rooms that a couple of the single moms, 3 single moms lived in that with their families. And one of the girls, Jamira, her mom goes out and works selling stuff, going door-to-door salesman, but she lives there. And we surprised her with a birthday cake. She had no clue. And she turned 19, and when we called her in there, it was totally a surprise. It literally took her 3 minutes to come inside the door because she couldn't believe, she was so shocked and was in tears, and she told us, she goes, that's the first time I've ever had a birthday cake. And it's just, birthdays, they're special, but it's hard when put it this way, I think a birthday cake cost 40,000 shillings, which I think that's like $12. But the ladies that live in that front make $50,000 a month. So it's hard to justify a birthday cake when you're talking. And so she was happy, just a lot of things like that, a lot of opportunities to love the people around us, to do crazy things with them. We got to see the slum. We got to see just a lot of crazy stuff. But I'll tell you this, God is still working there. God is still moving. And Pastor James and her team is doing a great job, and they appreciate our support. And so I do have a slideshow I'll play for you at the end, but I do want to share with you something that I really feel God gave me on this trip. And for me anyway, I was thinking, I was kind of bummed that I haven't been able to go to a pastor's conference in a while just because of everything. And you watch them online, but it's just not the same as getting away. But for me, this was probably the best pastor's conference I could ever be a part of. And because God just really met me there through the difficulties, through the joys, through the tears, through the laughter. And so I really feel like he gave me a message for me, but for us, it's a tweaked message from the last thing I shared with them before we left. But I want you to know that this message comes from a place of deep brokenness. I remember sitting there at the table. I just put my headphones in because everybody was playing outside, and I just needed to kind of drown the noise because I just knew I needed to have this time to prepare stuff. And I was playing Maverick City Music's song, or just their album, and the song Jireh came up, and it talks about how God is our provider. And for a moment, I just sat there, and I'm listening to these words in the midst of this great poverty. And I'm thinking, really, this is all I could say to them? the poverty is so great. The need is so great that the most I could say to most of these people, I didn't have the resources to make a dent in what was going on. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, man, all I can tell them is God will provide. And I just lost it. I mean, I'm sitting there and I'm just weeping. And from this place of brokenness, God met me there. And he gave me this message. And I want to give you a quote today from not a very spiritual man, but it's a quote that really hit me. And it's a quote from Rocky Balboa. And you laugh, but I mean, I had to, there was times where I just had to put something on, and I downloaded on my iPad the 2 Creed movies. And because when you're bummed out, you got to have something exciting. And so Creed, Rocky's a good go-to, right? But when Rocky was talking to young Creed about fighting Ivan Drago's son and trying to tell him why he shouldn't do it, he said this. He said, speaking of Ivan about himself, he said, he did things to me that I don't think I'll ever recover from. And that was kind of this trip. Now, I say that and it sounds kind of like, oh, that's kind of a bummer, but I'll tell you this, I don't know that I want to recover from them. Because God met me there in this moment of brokenness and in the reality of what's going on in the world. And I learned a lot. And God showed up faithful. And I want to share with you, I think one of the things I learned the most from was as we sat there and we were in this youth leadership training, and we're sitting in the building that we swore was going to fall on us. You walk in it, and the roof is kind of slanted, and the construction there is sketchy at best. And you're looking around, and the paint's peeling, and you're like, what's going on? And then you look at the pillars that are holding the roof up, and there's big chunks taken out of it. And I'm thinking, if there's an earthquake, we're dead. Like, there is no saving us here. We're gone. And then I'm thinking, if they just get excited and start singing, that we might die. Like, if those things start shaking, and it scared me. But we're sitting there, and Pastor James asked them a question. He said, what did you learn most from COVID? And one of their youth leaders, and I can't remember his name, he said this. He said, people are hurting with a smile on top. And I thought, wow, what a description of what's going on. There's hurting, there's pain all around us, but people have a smile on top. And so I titled this message Lift Your Eyes Up and Let God Reveal His Beauty. And what I mean is, so many times I think what we look at is just the surface. And if you look at that was the view from the water tower that was behind our house. Where the little banana tree is, that's part of the property. But on the other side of that razor wire is the slum. And you look up and you just see the beauty of that sunset. But you would miss it if you just focused on the razor wire. And I believe what God wants us to do is to lift our eyes up beyond the reality of kind of the chaos of this world, to see the beauty in what He's doing. And so today what I hope to do is lift your eyes high enough so that you can see the beauty in the mess that we live in. And so if you want to open your Bible to Revelation chapter 5, we're going to look at the first 7 verses. And the first thing that we're going to see about the beauty that God has revealed to us is that there's beauty in darkness. And so it starts in verse 1. It says, and I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. Then I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the scroll and to loose its seals? And no one in heaven or on the earth or underneath the earth was able to open the scroll or to look at it. So I wept much because no one was found worthy to open and read the scroll or to look at it. But one of the elders said to me, do not weep. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has prevailed to open the scroll and to loose its 7 seals. And I looked, and behold, in the midst of the throne and of the four living creatures and in the midst of the elders stood a lamb as though he had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. Then he came and took the scroll out of the right hand of him who sat on the throne. Worthy is the Lamb. And so here in heaven, we're introduced to a scroll, right? That's what John focuses our attention here, is this scroll. So the question naturally must be, what is the scroll, right? And in this picture here, if you look at it, that's in that slum. And you would look at that and you think, that's a dark place. But look at the beauty. The beauty in that darkness. And it's crazy because all we did was walk around the corner from where we lived, or where we stayed for 3 weeks, and they followed us. They would touch our arms to see if we felt the same as other people. They would rub the hair on our arms. But look at the smiles. Look at the beauty that's there, that is magnified in the darkness. But here we see the scroll. Jeremiah 32 identifies it as a title deed to a piece of property. The scroll really here is the title deed to the planet Earth. So why is it written on both sides? Well, in the Old Testament, if you had a piece of property and you lost it due to a hardship, what they would do is they would take a piece of paper and they would write on it what you would need to do in order to redeem your property to get it back, what financial obligations you would need to meet in order to get that. Then they would take that title deed, roll it into that what they just wrote, and put 7 seals on it so that you would know what your financial obligations were. You would then be given 7 years to redeem your property. If you met the financial obligations, that person who had your property would then give it back to you, give you the deed, and you'd get your property back. But that transaction would take place in the temple, where they would loosen that, they would read what the requirements were, and then proclaim that that was paid in full, and you got your property back. So here we are in heaven, the ultimate temple with a scroll sealed with 7 seals, representing the title deed to the earth, which Adam passed on to Satan when he sinned, giving Satan control of the world that we live in. This world that we live in is not the world that God created. It's the world that is impacted by the sin of mankind, and therefore that's why we see what we see in the world we live in today. And it's easy to look at the world and say, man, it's a dark place. It's a horrible place. And to see the darkness and lose sight of what God is doing, right? And it is here that as the seal is, the scroll is revealed, the question is asked, who is worthy to open this? Which is interesting because it poses an interesting question. Notice that they didn't say who is willing. Why? Because many people are willing to be in charge of the world, but there's only one who's worthy. You know, many people spend so much time looking for something or someone else to do what only Jesus could do. And that's true no matter where you are in the world. You see, we tend to look for someone who's willing to make a difference, not somebody that's worthy and able to make a difference. We were driving through downtown Kampala, and the traffic is crazy. It's a community that was built to maybe have 1 million people live in it, and we were told that daily there's 6 million people that congregate there. The traffic, there's no traffic like that traffic, and they're crazy when they're driving it. But we were stuck in that traffic one day, and JT noticed some street kids knocking on our window with their hand out. And JT asked Connie, what are they doing, Mom? And she said they're begging for money. See, they were looking for somebody who was willing to give them some money. And JT's response just melted my heart. He said, well, we have money. You know, he wanted to meet that need. You see, many times people are looking for somebody who's willing but not worthy. But in verses 3 and 4, we saw that there was no one worthy And for the first time in heaven, there was weeping because of what was going on. But yet it was in heaven's darkest moment that God was about to do his best work. And I love this. And it's interesting because if we're not careful, we'll miss it. We would miss the work that God was going to do. You see, if we don't look up, we'll miss the work that God is doing. We'll miss the beauty in what's going on. Like John, what we need to do is behold the Lion who has prevailed. Remember that. We need to look up. You see, we can look at what's going on in our world and we can get so discouraged and we could want to give up. We could want to quit. We could look for somebody willing to make a difference. But what we need to do is we need to take a moment and look up and behold the Lion who has prevailed. And what we'll see is that he prevailed not as a lion, but when he came as a lamb and when he was slain. When Jesus came as the Lamb of God, you see what it reveals to us is this: Jesus is worthy, but he was also willing and able to redeem the world. He was able to and willing to redeem what the world says there is no value in, and that's the people. So when you're wondering what God is doing, stop for a moment. Lift your eyes up beyond the chaos and behold Jesus, who's seated on the throne. So how did he do this? How did he redeem the world? And what could we learn from that? In Matthew 13, verses 44 through 46, we're going to get the redemptive process described to us. And in verse 44 of chapter 13, what we're going to see is this: there's beauty beneath the surface. That picture there was on our walk behind the church. We were going and checking out, meeting some of the kids, going to their homes, and that was what you saw everywhere. And you would look at that and you'd say, ugh, that's kind of gross. What is that? And that's a good question. That's the stuff that JT was playing in, that Connie said it's amazing that he's not sick. But that's also the stuff that these families are living in. But yet there's beauty beneath the surface in there, and that's what we're going to see. And here's what verse 44 says. It says, again, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and hid. And for joy over it, he goes and sells all that he has to buy the field. You see, in Jesus' day, what was happening is this: if you had wealth, what you would do is you'd go into your property, dig a hole, bury your treasure, bury your wealth, and leave it there for safety. Well, here this man stumbles across this treasure, and we're told that with joy, he sold all that he had to buy the field in order to get the treasure. It's crazy. So what's the field? Well, the field is the world. That's what Jesus taught us. It's the world that Adam sold out, but the world that Jesus bought back. You see, when Adam ate from the forbidden tree, he handed humanity and the title deed to the earth over to our enemy. But Jesus, what did he do? He hung on a tree to redeem humanity from the enemy. Why? Because he wants to reveal something to us. You see, through Adam, the ground was cursed. What do we know about Jesus? That for our sakes, he became a curse. Sin produced thorns. And Jesus took those thorns, had them formed into a crown, and had them smashed on his head. Why? So that he could, with his blood, stand confidently before the Father and declare this: I am worthy to take the scroll. I am worthy. I purchased it. You see, the price for redemption has nothing to do with money. It had to be paid by death, and Jesus willingly died to redeem the world. You see, Jesus is the man who saw past all the brokenness and saw the treasure in the middle of the world. Some people come to this and say, well, Jesus is the treasure, and you need to sell everything and show your commitment to the Lord. No. That's wrong. What we need to understand is this, that we were that treasure that Jesus gave everything. That Jesus saw past what was on the surface and saw the value that is there. One of the things that I learned while we were there was that the need is just so great, and that there's not enough money in the world to meet it. Just can't do it. There is no way. And it's crazy because you just felt so hopeless at that moment. But what I learned is this, that there's no amount of money on the earth that could do what Jesus' blood did. And that is to show people that there was a God who was worthy, who sees value in them, and was willing to give everything to reveal that treasure. This morning, as I was going through everything and half delirious because all I could hear was, I could fly at 3 a.m. I asked myself this question: how did he find the treasure? I think sometimes we miss that concept. And I realized he found the treasure because of 2 reasons. Number one, he must have been looking for it, right? He was on a treasure hunt. 2, he was willing to look beyond the surface, which meant he was willing to get down in the midst of that and wade through it to reveal that treasure so that we would know that we are valuable. And maybe you're saying today, well, I'm not much of a treasure. All I ever do, you fill in the blank. Maybe all you feel like is maybe you're an irritation at best, a burden. Well, that's why we have the next verse. You see in verses 44 through 46, what we're going to see is beauty in the most unlikely places. And do we have another slide? That picture there is taken at the where the property that they bought to grow their food. And it's a village that is right there. And if you look at those kids, they don't have a whole lot. But they didn't care what they looked like. They didn't care what their clothes looked like. But if you look at them, there's just such beauty there. Well, one of the things that Connie was constantly saying is, you look around and look at what people are wearing, and they don't care what's on their shirt. They're just happy they have a shirt. We wake up like, I got to have my Nike shirt, shoes, and, they didn't care. To them, it didn't matter what was on the front of the shirt. To them, it was just about surviving. But there's beauty in the most unlikely places, and, if we don't lift our eyes high enough, we'll never see that. And in verse 45, it says, again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking beautiful pearls, who, when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. So here's this merchant looking for a pearl. What's fascinating is how a pearl comes into existence. A pearl happens because a grain of sand gets lodged in an oyster's mouth. That oyster then begins to coat that grain of sand with layer upon layer of this crystal substance that when it hardens, it becomes a pearl. And what they're told is the more irritating that grain of sand is, the more beautiful and valuable that pearl is. I must be a pretty valuable pearl. Just ask my wife. No, just kidding. But here we have this pearl. And what are we seeing here? We're going to see the beauty in the most unlikely places. Have you ever opened an oyster? It's kind of gross. It's, it's like, and some people eat those things. I'm like, oh, no. But in the midst of that, in the most unlikely places, we have beauty. And what God wants you to know is that you are that pearl. You're that pearl of great price that he gave everything to buy. When did you become that pearl? The moment you asked Jesus to save you. Because it's at that moment that he clothed you with his robe of righteousness, making you beautiful. He clothed you. He did a work. You might feel irritating, but Jesus says this, that you are the gem of his grace. You're the glory of the Lamb. And that's what we got to see. We got to see beauty in unusual places, beauty in the most unlikely places. But when did Jesus die to give you value? When you were at your worst. And I love that. Not when you were at your best, but when you were at your worst. When you were nothing more than an irritation, he said this, I love you, and I'm going to give all that I have to buy what I was searching for. Think about that for a moment. Jesus was searching for you. You see, that's nothing that money can buy. That's the truth. See, while we were in Uganda, God showed me the beauty in the broken mess that we call this world. God showed me how he views humanity. And he reminded me that it's worth looking beyond the surface to find it. Because that's what he did. And it's the little things in our life that he uses to reveal that beauty to the people. You see, by you guys sending us to Uganda, letting us be there, supporting and sending love and money and praying for us and all those things, you were able to buy a cake for a 19-year-old girl that never had a birthday cake, who now knows that she is beautiful in the eyes of God. You guys were able to buy a tent that they needed for an overflow because the first day they opened church, they had no space to put them, so they put them in that room that tried to kill everybody. You guys were able to buy bodas for 2 guys so that they can now take the food and go distribute it and see these kids that God's entrusted to them. You see, it's in the little things that we do that reveal to the people around us that they are God's beautiful treasure and that he loves them. But if we don't look up far enough, we'll miss it. You see, first we need to look up. And if we look up long enough, we'll see the beauty of God's treasure. I truly believe that. And it doesn't matter where we are. And as we're looking up, Jesus reveals the pearls in the midst of the hurts and the pains and the sorrows and the griefs. Showing us and reminding us how he went beyond the surface to find that treasure. And how he was willing to do everything to purchase that. So again, from Pastor James and everybody, thank you for what you've done. And I put a video together, and I pray that what it'll do is encourage you to look past the surface and be able to see the beauty that God allowed you guys to be a part of redeeming.